It's time for Q&A in the Kitchen. It's a podcast and YouTube series where tattoo artists and piercer talk about some of the more common questions that those that collect tattoos and piercings may have. Brought to you in part by Skin Kitchen Tattoo and the Axiom Body Piercing Studio. Today we're going to talk about patents. Nope, that's the wrong one, isn't it? We're going to talk about that in the next episode.
What's the matter?
It doesn't really matter. We can talk about that in this one. Patents and how it affects tattooing and piercing, whether or not it should be something that happens, what have you. But before we get into the meat of the matter, we should probably talk about who's here today.
Just potatoes.
On my far right is Jemmy St. John, a tattoo artist here at the Skin Kitchen. Directly next to me on my right is Jack Lowe, a tattoo artist at the Skin Kitchen. I'm DaVo. I own and operate the Axiom Body Piercing Studio. I guess I should mention that Jack also owns the Skin Kitchen. And then over here on my left is Brent Starr, a tattoo artist at the Skin Kitchen. So who wants to start this one out? I did a video kind of on this already, but I think it'd be interesting to talk about the tattoo angle of it too.
The first thing that popped into my head when you brought this idea, this topic to me was how a lot of times in the past I'd hear it. I don't hear it a lot as much anymore, but a lot of times people come in and with maybe a logo or Looney Tunes or something, and would say something like, "Yeah, I know you can't do it exact because of copyright," or can you do this because it's copywritten? And it doesn't affect. We can tattoo anything on you, no matter how copyrighted it is or not. And the way I understand it was back in the day, the Walt Disney Corporation got upset because everybody was getting Mickey Mouse, and so they had a lawsuit and lost.
Yep.
And it was determined that it's not infringing on the patent at all, and so that does not apply to the world of tattooing. So, which is good, which is great, and now I think it's funny because there's the other side where companies are wanting you to get their logo tattooed.
Yeah,
on you.
that was like a thing for a minute. Where people would pay you. I think what it came down to is what they did is they cited the original court case. I could be completely wrong on this, but when Warhol was doing all the soup cans, I believe he got sued by Campbell's, if I remember correctly, but I could be wrong, or maybe this is folklore. But basically, they cited that no, because it was a new art piece.
Yeah.
It is different from the original.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
That the two are separate, and the same thing with tattoo.
Yeah, there's a lot of license given to artists in the regard of originality. All you have to do is just change one little tiny thing, and hey, it's different. It's art,
Exactly.
So it's very subjective.
And the nature of tattooing almost has that built in,
Right.
because you're doing it by hand on a living thing. So there's always that handmade effect that you're going to get,
Right.
to where it's very rarely going to be just a straight knockoff. And usually people are like, I want Mickey Mouse, but I want him fishing and holding the fish, or
But think how
something
boring
like
the world would be like if you couldn't copy art at all. Like all those Michelangelos, Creation of Man, and
right.
all those other little nitbits and pieces they take from different art, and put it on phone covers. And,
it does
shower
nothing.
curtains and all that. It just
It does nothing but stifle creativity,
Yeah.
Right.
hold things back,
Yeah.
puts it in a box and sticks it in the dark and makes it untouchable.
Gosh, how long ago you think we would have ran out of stuff to tattoo on people? Like we couldn't
Quite a while ago.
build off of other ideas and use stuff for.
It would be probably one of the best ways to destroy art
Yes.
in our society.
Absolutely.
Or just
Let's not give
in
them any
general.
ideas.
It would be that strict lockdown on. They used a smiling face, so no more smiling faces, and stuff like that, which hopefully is a while before they bring that law in.
No
but-
more having a nice day.
Well, and it creates a situation where you have patent trolls and copyright trolls
Right.
Yeah.
who just purposely go out and take we were talking before about the car, about the guy that patented the idea of the car, the automobile, and how he, for years, all these manufacturers would pay him out money until one of the manufacturers said, "What? No, we're not paying you."
Yeah.
And it creates a parasite situation, or it stifles creativity and innovation.
Totally.
And like with piercing, the only time it's really happened is with this Maria Tash she patented and got accepted for 2 piercings, a hidden rook and a hidden hidden helix. The jewelry manufacturing, that I think you should have the right to kind of control how that looks, because that is a finished product. But the piercing, where it requires the right anatomy, every piercing is completely different. It's not the same. It's an art. It's not.
Wow. I can't believe they gave her a patent for the location of where to put a piece of jewelry in your body.
Yeah,
a process.
You're not allowed to put a piece of jewelry in that part of your body. No one.
Unless I say so.
Go flip off, man.
It's
like,
crazy.
And see, it's not a place where people haven't pierced before.
Right.
It's all about. One is basically a vertical conch piercing. The other one is just a helix piercing, where someone has a very pronounced helix ridge, that flap at the top of your ear, that is big enough that it can cover something. And then you put a chain, or you put a dangly thing on there, and it looks like there's no piercing there. It's just floating there.
Right.
People have been piercing in those spots for years. I've done them mainly for people that had that anatomy, but worked a job where they weren't allowed to have upper ear cartilage piercings or helix piercings, and we pierced there, or the conch there, because it's hard to see it. So they could have their piercing, but nobody needed to know they had it.
Yeah.
So it was kind of a hidden thing. I guess.
You remember when the flesh tone stuff came out, like for the tongue, like acrylic balls or semi-flat balls and stuff for different stuff that look like
no
weren't
seams.
pierced? Yeah,
that's what they called them.
Yep.
No seams.
Yep.
No seams.
Those were huge for a while.
Yeah. With tattooing, I know in the past that they, I could see copywriting flash. That makes sense.
Sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But they weren't going, okay, now every time you do this tattoo from this flash, you have to pay.
Well, that's why they sold the flash.
Yep.
Yeah,
Once
and
you
that's why
sell it,
flash is so expensive.
Right.
A lot of people don't realize back in the day when you walked into a tattoo shop and there was flash like covering every speck of everything, sometimes even the ceiling.
Wallpaper.
I've seen shops.
Floors and everything.
Just one page of flash can be well over $100. Typically, you buy it in sets, either 5 sheets, sometimes 8 or 10, but usually it's 5 sheets, and there's 4 to 6 or so designs typically on a page, and you could easily pay $250 to $500 for 5 sheets of pictures. And so if you walk into one of those old shops and you start adding up how many pieces of paper are tacked up all over the place, that was really your biggest expense in opening a tattoo shop, was the designs.
And that's why back in the day you weren't allowed, when phones started coming out, like you weren't allowed to take your phone out of your pocket and take pictures of stuff, because you were stealing it.
Yeah, and another reason for that is too, because that might be the only place on planet Earth that design exists. It could have been drawn by a friend or an artist there, and they don't want you to be able to take their designs to another shop and get it done.
Because it started out as like a way for them to, here's everything I can do.
Yeah.
And this is all your options, because it was a faster process back then.
Well,
it had to be, to a degree.
Kinda. Well, part of it, I think, was there was such a preparation process to get that design onto your body. They had to take acetate, which is like a thin, clear plastic, put it over the design. They would take a vibrating pen or an engraver, and they would engrave the design into that plastic.
Then you had to sprinkle the stencil stuff over top of it. It was a huge process.
Yeah, you'd put graphite on it, and you'd wipe the graphite off of the plastic, so it'd just leave the graphite in the edges. And then they'd usually use something like Vaseline or speed stick type, kind of a tacky stuff, and they'd put it where you want the design, and they would have to take this flat piece of plastic and transfer that powder off of that piece of plastic so it's stuck to whatever's sticky on your arm.
And it was thick plastic too, so it wasn't very malleable.
It was very tough. So that's part of the reason the designs back in the day were more simple than they are now, because you could only get so much design, so much detail to come off.
Yeah.
And then the second you touch it, if you wipe it, it's gone.
Or if they sweat or, get nasty, like pass out.
So it was unheard of. And plus, no internet, no pictures. I mean, you'd have to go to a library to maybe find an illustration of something. So they would have to prepare all these pieces of artwork and have them on hand. So when you came in and said, I want that one, but a little smaller, they're like, no. You get that one, that size, or you don't get it because it's such a long process.
Yeah, there's no copy machines and stuff, and the stencil machine that most people use in tattoo shops. The Thermofax didn't come out till the 40s and 50s, and they basically went obsolete and out of business around 60s, early 70s, and there was back in Virginia, there was one dude that worked for the original company, and he would drive around in his car. He had a station wagon. He had parts. He had extra Thermofaxes. He would ride up and down the East Coast and stop in the tattoo shops. He was the only dude that could fix your Thermofax or give you parts for it because he had the overstock of when the company shut down. And that was it, dude. If you didn't know him or know how to get in touch with him, you were out of luck, bro. You hand drove your stuff.
The more tattooing grew and got popular and those machines got popular, they started making new ones that were specifically for tattooing, but they're none of them that I've tried, and I'm sure there's a bunch of them that I haven't at this point. But I've tried several of them, and none of them come anywhere near the ones that were built, way back, and they were used originally for overhead projectors. So they would it was to take a page of text or whatever, and it would transfer it onto a clear piece of Lexan plastic that you'd put on top of the overhead, and then it would project
it. Do it in school, and they'd write on it.
Yeah, I mean, and that's a thing I don't think any kid today would even experience.
No, on computer.
Overhead projector was 90% of what we watched. There was no whiteboards.
No.
It was either on that thing or it was on a chalkboard.
Yeah.
So,
Now I imagine, they'd use some sort of video
PowerPoint.
link. I'm drawing on my iPad, and you're seeing it up on the board or something like that.
And all the classrooms have televisions in them, so they can watch their local.
Or they have those.
Stuff.
They're like a big screen that they draw right on the screen. And then they can go to a different page and then go back to the page. And I think MythBusters, when they were still putting out episodes, their last couple years on there, they were using one of those big things, and it's really cool because you can set up animations on it and graphs and all that stuff, but still just scribble and write and all that on it. They're a pretty neat deal.
Yeah, God, we went to school in the Stone Age. I feel like.
I know that Microsoft had this thing called the Surface that was experimental, and then it kind of went away. But one of the things I want to bring up was by the time I got into piercing and tattooing and everything, there were a lot of companies out there in artists that kind of supplemented their slow seasons and got additional income by selling flash.
Yeah,
you either sold flash, and there used to be when you go to conventions, there was actually a class you do like best of tattoo, best color, the awards and the competitions.
There'd be a flash.
There was a flash part. You had the best flash set and all that stuff back then too, and you had to take it around and if it was a good set, the people in there, the other artists would buy it.
Yeah, you could easily make way more money off at a convention if you had a nice, good new set of flash, walking around to the booths and selling your set for $500.
And if it won at that show, this is the best flash sheet out, this month or whatever, then that really pushed it up. Now it's $1,000 for this set, whatever.
Like Judy Parker is probably one of. If you don't know, if you're in tattooing and you've been in it for any length of time and you don't know that name, then you've never worked in a flash shop.
Nope.
Yeah.
You've never worked in a flash
shop. She's like the godmother of flash.
And her flash stood out over everyone else's, especially back then, because it was very illustrated, very detail oriented, very
beautiful,
legible. Her mermaids and things,
sharks, and
they're just gorgeous stuff. And now, I mean, you can't find flash in a tattoo shop at all.
Now, when you do find it, it's more of a collector's thing or kind of a novelty thing.
Yeah, it's more like for decoration.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess when you have the ability to look at every single piece of art ever made by a human being on a little screen you keep in your pocket, kind of negates the the fact that that you don't need any pictures anymore.
Which always makes it a little interesting when somebody comes in and goes, "I don't know what I want."
Right? What more are you expecting to see here?
Well, what kills me these days is that people come in and say say you wanted an eagle tattoo.
Yeah.
Instead of looking at like eagles, like actual eagles, like National Geographic and photos of eagles, because there's so many, they go, eagle tattoo. I don't need to see another picture of a tattoo. I just, if you want an eagle, I look up eagles.
Right.
And
And see, that's
that.
another thing with Flash. I think a lot of artists built off of that. Because you would
that's where it
have
came from.
once the Thermothax.
Thermothax.
That's once that came into use, it would be a situation where it's like, well, I want this at a different size. I want this at a different angle. I would like to have her right-handed or left-handed, and it opened that up. So you're building on that art, and that's one of the reasons why copywriting images for tattooing or a piercing and not allowing that progression of the art form. Or saying, well, you can't do a tattoo that I did on someone else.
Yeah, that was a big deal back in like the beginning when I started in the '90s, late '90s, early 2000s. I remember one of the huge things that came out when I started tattooing is we had a copier and it had a mirror button on it.
Yeah.
So you could take something and go like mirror it, and it would. So if it was facing left and then it was facing right without redrawing it and all that stuff, man, that was like.
Yeah.
That was like,
I think the Thermofax changed tattooing more than anything else up to that point. That was the biggest improvement to do better, more detailed tattoos. And I think the iPad is is just as impactful and as the Thermofax was. I think those are one of the and if you're a tattooer out there, let me know what you think. I mean,
please.
I'm probably missing something, but really, I mean, when you've, like when somebody come in and want a rocker across their stomach, it says Martinez or something, and they wanted it in Old English, well, then you got the book out that had A, B, C in Old English. You draw a curve, and then you'd align each letter as perfect as you thought you could, and trace it, and then and then find the next letter and space it from that letter on that curve, and hope that by the time you got to the end of the curve, everything was right.
That's why
it usually wasn't.
That's why there's so many tattoos like that are on areas that are kind of smaller. I used to see them on the Nick all the time.
Yeah.
Like, they would tattoo like something, a real common one back in the punk rock scene at that point was skinhead. And not racist, and I'm not going to get into all that nonsense today. But they would start right here at just below the ear, and by the time they would get to mid-throat, they'd realize, oh, darn, I'm already up to I. And then the other side would slowly taper off or turn around the corner or something. And it's like, whoever did that did not know what they were doing.
Yeah. And now it's as easy as opening your iPad, typing it out, grabbing a few corners, and even on top of that, take a picture of their throat, and then you can have that picture and align it on them on the screen and print it out. And if it's not perfect, it's
and
damn
those
close.
new copiers too. The tank copiers where you can put the stencil stuff in the copy machine like we have.
Yeah,
that one in the room.
Yeah,
that thing has really advanced. Like you can do so much more, like even more detailed stuff than a Thermofax can.
Yep.
If you did some of that stuff on a Thermofax, you just have like a big blur.
Blue.
Purple stuff all over the page.
Yeah, it really gives you a lot more information in the stencil for you to go off of, and saves a lot of. Looking at
where am I at?
There's still a lot of that because you should be looking at your reference as much as you look at the piece you're doing. But anyway, it's little leaps and bounds like that are really cool. But it is really wild how Flash is just not.
Yeah, it's kind of faded out.
And see, if it was a situation where you had to pay a royalty to whoever was the original person who came up with the idea of doing a tattoo based on a sketch on an iPad, every single tattoo you did, or every tattoo you did of, a Taz or a dream catcher, or whatever is hip and cool at that point in time, like infinity symbols, armbands, any of that stuff. It would get to a point where the person who's really going to end up not getting what they really want is the customer.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it eliminates it.
What a great pyramid scheme that would be.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So a nice little pond.
But, the iPad has made a mass improvements. I remember drawing like a sleeve or a back piece, like something large. And you'd get a mermaid on a rock with the sharks and blah, 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 and a sunken ship behind her, and it's all ready for the back. And somebody would come in and be like, well, she's sitting on the rock like this. Can we make her hand like come over here or hold something up? Or I can do that, but I got to redraw this like 12-hour drawing
right
again.
Yeah, it's like
isn't that something you could have mentioned at the console?
Yeah, that would have been helpful like 4 days ago.
Yeah.
and that's another thing you don't see as often is light boxes,
Right?
Or
None.
artists drawing on the window.
Well, they still have them back in Virginia, one of the shops I worked at. Like,
Yeah.
I talked to the owner until I was blue in the face. I was like, dude, iPads.
Yeah.
I'm not spending all that money. Blah blah blah. And he built a bigger light. He made a light table that went from like one end of the room to the other, so multiple artists could sit on it. It was huge. It was nice.
He's made that investment now, and he does not want to back down.
We built it by hand, dude. There's a couple like fluorescent lights and some.
Well, and the thing is, think of how much square footage that takes up.
Right.
Then you have drawing utensils, you have tracing paper, you have sharpeners, you have templates, you have rulers, you
Erasers.
have everything, all that. Every single item is contained in a thin piece of glass that you can sit anywhere on the toilet, in the car while you're waiting on somebody, and work.
Yeah.
You know,
and you're not including all the reference books.
Right.
Exactly.
And people that
books
don't
full of
tattoo
everything.
don't get, like when you see that final piece of paper we brought out, like for your sleeve, like it looks all cohesive. It's really cool. It's all clean and line drawn and like ready to go. You haven't seen me draw like the first part of that, the second part of that, the third part of that, and I started tracing it out. And and then I added some more stuff. Then I changed this or I changed that. I've redrawn and retraced over that my own work 20 times to get that finished, clean line drawing from where it started as a sketch. Like, you know what I mean? And you just keep refining it. And man, the hours and the paper and the pencils and the all the supplies that you eat up, it's crazy.
and if you forget it at home,
yeah, you're screwed.
your girlfriend can't just email you the design. You know what I mean?
Or you set a coffee cup on top of it.
Or spill something on it, or
Yeah.
your
Your dog
nose
eats
is
it.
running, or
Your dog eats it or
Yep.
catches on fire. But yeah,
because we used to try to eat when we drew. Like that was
Oh, yeah.
that was your moment of down to eat. So you're trying to like Cheetos and a cheeseburger, and like shit, I just dropped stuff on my drawing.
Yep.
Now I got to start over.
definitely one of the
Or we
biggest.
could put it in the tattoo.
Yeah, you want some cheeseburger slime on
Yeah,
there?
little.
Yeah.
You know,
I think
what's that? I think it's a ketchup stain.
I did
Yeah.
a tattoo
that
like
looks
that on a
nice.
young lady. She had a piece of artwork, and she had set a coffee cup on it.
Yeah.
And she wanted the coffee ring that sat on top of the artwork
That's
on
cool.
the tattoo. Yeah, it was really neat. So we tattooed it like that. And
Yeah.
everybody's like, what the hell is that? She's like, that's where I set my coffee on my artwork.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's brilliant, dude.
I
It's
love
so
it.
Cool.
It became a part of it.
I like doing.
And if it was patented to do that or copyrighted to do that, then you wouldn't be able to do that.
No, not
You know
something-
that,
right.
and see that's the biggest problem with this is no art expands and goes quickly unless you have a freedom of expression to build off of other artists.
Exactly. You know.
When someone comes in for a piercing or a tattoo, it's basically they are commissioning you to do something for them, and they're collaborating with you just like a patron would. And what we can do and what we can't do is pretty well. I mean, right now it's pretty open. We can build off of other people's ideas. The entire piercing industry is built off of other people's ideas and
That's
the
how you
free
advance.
exchange of information.
That's how it
Thanks to
advances.
the internet and things like Piercing Fans Quarterly International and publications and tattooing.
Everything.
Where would have tattooing gone without those tattoo magazines?
I think
Right.
I think people in the industry, tattooing specifically, I guess, but it could go probably for any art. People that are unwilling to share and talk about their process and what they do to get there. It tells me at least that they think that this secret is what makes them.
Right.
Like without this secret, then they're just like everyone else. Well, you don't think a lot of yourself, you know.
Right.
You know, you need to realize the reason you know what you know is because of what other people
Right.
knew, and you built
Right.
on it.
Right.
So if you have a technique that you do and you're unwilling to share it, that's as far as you
It's
go.
going to die with
That's
you.
as far as you
Right.
go. You're holding back an entire industry. You're holding back, all these people and this art that you're supposed to love.
Right.
And you're holding it back. You're putting an anchor on it.
Yeah.
To share and to talk about how you did this. when I do that, I learn the most when I do that.
Exactly.
You know, because when I open that conversation and I'm talking to an artist about, oh, normally I would do this and that to get to there, and they will talk about how they would do it.
Yeah.
Well, even if that's not how I would do it, I get an inkling or I get a feeling of why they thought that way, and maybe that doesn't help there, but maybe it will down the road.
Right.
And all that would have not happened unless you were open talking about how you do stuff.
Well, that's how a lot of stuff advances. It's almost like a happy accident. Like, okay, this guy said that, well, when he does this to make this work better. So you try it, and then like, while in the middle of you trying it, plus what you already know, you kind of combine them, and you're like, oh, eureka! Wait a minute. If I do what he said plus what I'm saying, and combine this and that of those, like, it's even better than that.
And then the
like,
first thing you're going to want to do is go tell that
somebody.
person that shared you, hey man, check this out.
Right.
Yeah.
And you help you help them, you help the industry. Now you and this other guy that work in the same shop maybe are improving the entire shop,
Or if you're
improving your
cross-country.
artwork. You're only holding
spreading.
yourself back as far as I'm concerned if you are not open with your peers and talk about how you create your art and what you do to create it. It shows me that you're scared, that you're intimidated by other artists, that you're looking at it as a competition. And I guess maybe, in a way it could maybe.
Yeah.
But
It's
you're
art,
going to
man.
eat. You're going to eat, you're going to make a living, and I guarantee you're going to improve faster the more you share,
Absolutely.
And when you share something with someone, every single time they're doing that technique, they're going to think of you.
Yeah.
They're going to remember learning that, and they're going to think, whether it's, whether they realize it or not, it's going to let them know, I want to be that. I want to give a gift to someone and have
I
it
want to pass it
grow into
Right.
something I couldn't even imagine.
Yeah.
And I was the seedling for it, and maybe that's just as bad ego as it is not to share, but at least it's helping.
At least it's growing.
It's moving, it's moving things forward. And so anytime I see someone that does this with their cards, when it comes to that, they're
Not into it.
They're just gonna stick.
Yeah, because how sad would it be if you traveled the world and you experienced all these wonderful forms of art and tattooers and painters and sculptors, and you learned this little bit of knowledge from all of them, and then like you didn't share it with anyone, and then like you passed on.
Yeah.
All that knowledge you accumulated is lost.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And the other artists that you've accumulated from, maybe they're gone now. So like there's your ending lines of fantastic, beautiful creation. Like why would you do that?
It's not about you.
No,
Like,
it
I get,
isn't,
that's
and
how I look
usually
at
what
it.
it is, and it's
Yeah.
usually this attitude that, well, I don't want anybody profiting off of my idea.
Yeah.
I'm the one that came up with
But
this.
you are.
I'm important.
You are going to profit.
Yes,
You know,
are.
that's the thing. You're not going to sell your great idea because you don't want other people. Well, then it's worthless.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nobody would know
Then nobody's
about
gonna
it.
You
use
do
it
it
or
in the first
benefit
place
from
unless
it.
it'd be like somebody coming to you and getting a Paul Booth style tattoo. They're still gonna want to go back and actually they would be massively psyched to have Paul Booth do that tattoo.
Yeah.
right.
Eventually, so it's always going to flow. It's a two-way street. It's always going to flow one way or another. And the other thing is, if you really want to understand the creativity of the human nature, take any kid and hand them a cardboard box and say, "Play with this,"
Yeah, totally.
and they will come up with things to do with that box
You never
that you
imagined.
never ever imagined.
Yeah.
And all you did was just applied that box. And now you have a totally different way of looking at that box. It's a spaceship. It's a car. It's a slide.
It's a house.
It's a house. It's it's not just this thing that you put stuff in and carry from one side.
It's a
to
time
the
machine.
other. Yeah, exactly.
It could be
And that's really what we try to do.
Yeah, you're expanding your imagination, which is, I think, these days lost a lot of the younger people. They're not encouraged to use their creativity or their creative side or to imagine outside the box and think of something new.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I thank you to any artist out there who's at a convention, had a seminar, and is willing to open up like that, because I've learned so much from several artists just by them being willing to spend a couple hours in a room with a few other guys and just talk meat and potatoes, about what they do, how they do it. And those people to me show so much more character and show that they are in it because of the art, because of tattooing. Like, we are all just a molecule in tattooing.
Oh, yeah.
It's not you. You know, you're gonna be in this for a split second, then you're gonna die.
Yep.
Wouldn't you want to benefit or give something to that thing that gave you purpose and worth and happiness and food?
Yeah.
You know, wouldn't you want to leave a little something for the next people to do the
I hope
same?
I have or am.
Because otherwise, no one's going to remember you.
Nope.
Right.
And nobody's going to give a crap about you once you're gone.
And that's really cool thing about tattooing.
Regardless of how good you were at what you did, if you just did what you did in this big bubble of isolation, people are going to be like, yeah, there was this person who did that a while ago, and I don't know whatever happened to them.
That was always a really cool
What
thing
was
about
his
tattooing.
name or her name?
I used to tell people all the time, like, you know, I'll leave my mark on the earth for long after I've been here.
Yeah.
Because hopefully the people that I've tattooed, you know, you always tattoo younger people and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
And like out of the people you've tattooed in the world, that tattoo is going to outlive you. A lot of them, hopefully. You know what I mean? So that's cool. That you're going to outlast your expiration date in this meat bag.
Which is
really
nothing
cool.
compared to
That's
how
nothing,
long
it really is, but
how long your ideas or your
Right.
sharing of process or
that's
what
the
you
other
use.
part of it.
That it to me is gonna make a bigger impact in a bigger way
Right.
than really about anything
That's-
else you could do.
I constantly get we get comments on the channel. It's like, well, thank you for being so informative, and I can't believe you're just sharing this information. It's like that's what I do
what
every
it is
day.
for.
Yeah.
Every time somebody comes in the shop, if I have a chance to educate them to have better results, I'm going to
Yeah.
do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, why wouldn't
Whether I'm talking about tattooing, piercing, whatever.
Yeah.
Even if it's talking about relationships, which we have those conversations. over.
Yeah.
It's
I
like,
don't do
here's
much,
my
I suck at
knowledge.
it.
It may not be worth anything to you, but you might be able to do something with it.
Sure.
Yeah. I recently got into 3D printing like a year or two ago, and I've just fallen in love with it. And one of the things that and it's just since I've been doing it, which is not very long, it has grown so crazy. And I think a big reason is in the 3D community, people share.
Yeah.
People
Yeah.
share. They will spend hundreds of hours on a design that is different, that is innovative, that is incredible, and they will give it away.
Yeah.
They will say, "Please take this.
Yeah.
And see,
Please do
Yeah.
some." You know,
Run with it. See if
Yeah.
you can find
when you
something
were at
better.
the beginning of the internet, and tattooing and piercing both benefited from this. Piercing maybe a little bit more because it was a new thing. This idea of open source. Here's this basic. You take that and you figure that out and you find out, I'm going to give this to everybody because I know somebody in this crowd's going to perfect this
Yep.
and make
Yep.
this much better than what I can do by myself.
and then you're going to see
build
what
off
they
of it.
did with what you had, and they're going to take it further than you could have.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So, and
Exactly.
that's why you don't give back, you don't share, you don't become a part of the movement of the, what you're in. You're
You're missing
stagnant.
out.
Yeah.
You're stagnant. And
Yep.
You know, I'd like to say thank you to everybody in the conventions when I was young, just for allowing me to step in the back of their booth or beside their booth and just stand there and shut up and watch and learn.
Yeah.
Like they're willing to go, hey man, I'm doing this piece. Like, do you mind if I watch you do this? Like, sure.
Right.
You know, that furthered me more than anything I can ever remember.
Yeah, it really
You
does.
know, it really did.
Yep. Yeah. Everything I know was free.
Yeah.
Everything I do and how I do it, except for the seminars I took, which the money that you pay in a seminar is zero.
Yeah.
it really
I mean,
is.
from the knowledge you're getting, it's free basically. I mean, so that's the only way it's going to keep moving, in my
Right.
opinion. But
yeah.
open your mouth. Look
Yeah,
at Guy Atchison. That guy, ever since he was tattooing before I was in tattooing, he's still tattooing, and he's still just as open, just as forthcoming, and the way he does it is more of a, this is how I do it.
Yep.
I do this and then I do that. Now, it's not the right way. It's not the only way. It's a way. So if you like what I do and how it looks, hey, this is how I do it. And so many artists, thousands I'm sure, have taken either tiny little bits or big chunks of that and have taken it further.
Yep.
So I think without people like Guy Atchison that does this very different style and type of tattooing,
Yeah.
without him sharing, I don't think a lot of the artists that you see today that blow you out of the water would be
what they are,
they are, and where they are. So
I feel the
they may
same way
not
about
even
Philip
know it.
Lowe.
Right.
Like Philip Lowe, I've been looking up to him since I could pick up a magazine.
Mhm.
You know, and he's always been that way.
Yeah.
For everybody that I've known's ever met him, he's just he's an open book. Like, hey man, how would you do this? Well, I do it like this. Like, you know, check it out.
Yeah.
If that helps you, cool. You know, I hope it does.
I'm glad
this is how I do it.
I'm glad I was around artists like that earlier in my career too, because it taught me that kind of, you know, it taught me that, well, without him sharing,
Right.
without him willing to talk, I wouldn't have this knowledge.
Nope.
Yeah.
So who am I to keep it? Who am I? It's not mine.
Sure.
Yeah.
It's tattoo.
Yeah.
You know, it belongs to
Us.
tattooing, not just me. So who am I to take this information and just hold on to it? That's not fair. That's not right.
And see, that's why I've always had whenever I have anybody come in, if I have the time and they're asking about apprenticeship, even if I'm not even going to consider taking them on, I like to sit down and talk to them.
Yeah.
And give them a little bit of an insight of what the industry's like, some ideas or some things that can move them forward.
Yeah.
Educate
Because there were people
Absolutely.
that did that for me.
Right.
Except they were tattoo artists and they're going, I don't know about this whole piercing.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, really. So if you're one of those people, no matter what you're in, no matter what your shtick is, and I understand you trying to get a foothold and you thinking you have this technique that's gonna, get you out there and get some exposure. That's maybe one thing, but once you're a contributor and you are making a living from this art or this thing that was there way before you, give back.
Yeah.
Give, add to it, make it better than the way you found it, I guess.
Yeah. It's one of the oldest professions on the planet. It just started with caveman. Like, it actually outdates like prostitution and stuff. Like, it's been around.
Unless they found somebody older, the oldest human being that they've found on planet Earth had tattoos on them.
And piercings.
And piercings.
Yeah.
So
we've been
It's just part of
imitating
the
ever
human
since.
experience.
Yeah.
It has been since probably we learned how to do it.
Yeah, we've been imitating that and like trying to copy nature ever since.
Since the first guy was tending the fire and got poked in the arm with a stick with some soot on it, and it healed and it was
Left a
still
dot.
there, he went, ding.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah.
I could
Permanent
make
marking.
a picture.
And then
Yeah.
he told everybody.
Yeah. I'm gonna
Right.
paint something besides the cave wall.
Exactly. Yep.
So I think we covered this pretty well. Thank you for watching or listening. If you'd like to hear more of this or see more of this, please subscribe wherever you're at. Hit that notification bell so that you're notified every single time we post something. These go out about every 2 weeks. I know we're a little off schedule, but that's because we're busy fellers
Yep.
and ladies, as in Jess. She does our
Behind the
our
scenes.
changing.
Yeah, she's our
of the
cat wrangler, keeping up with us.
Yes. But also check out our merch store. Till next time, here's hoping all your tattoos and piercings heal with ease and without a single issue. And if you're in the Des Moines, Iowa area, we all hope to see you for your tattoo and body piercing needs in the future. Have a good day, everybody. Thank you for watching.
Thanks, guys. Be
Bye,
good.
guys.